Do you feel like everyone around you is getting published, winning grants, and stacking accolades? Have you seen colleagues celebrate on social media and felt that quiet sting of, why not me? Hey, co-authors. In this episode, I talk about the culture of comparison in academia and how it can drain joy from our work and even turn colleagues against one another. We'll discuss why this culture exists, how it harms us, and most importantly, how we can resist it. So let's dive in. So one of the things that I always recommend to my master's students whenever they tell me that they want to go on to get a doctorate and become a professor is to visit the college campus that they're thinking about going. And the reason for that is because, there's a lot of sort of objective criteria out there that can help you make that decision, right? How much money are they offering you in assistance and scholarships? What are the living conditions like? What are their placement rates for graduating students into doctoral programs or into tenure track positions? But there's a lot of things to be said about the type of culture that the program might have. Because if you have a really bad culture, if you have faculty who aren't supporting you, then that can really harm your ability to be successful post-graduation. The reason that I do this is because I remember whenever I was looking for doctoral programs. And one in particular, I was walking around with a faculty member who was giving me a campus tour. And they were telling me about the things that were going on in the department and all the success that they'd had. And as we're walking past the department's office, I see this big case. And it's filled with all these books and publications and awards won by the faculty. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. It's awesome that your faculty are so active. And they were like, oh yeah, we really kick butt. We have very active faculty. They're all very big names in their fields. I was like, oh man, that's so awesome. So where's the case that you have all the work from the doctoral students in? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, we don't really have that. Oh, well, why not? Well, we found that some of the students felt bad because they didn't have any work that was getting published. They weren't really doing that well. They really made the culture of the department really unpleasant. And so we just decided to not put any student work out there. And as you can imagine, this was a huge red flag for me for two reasons. First, you have a departmental culture where you have unsuccessful graduate students. And instead of helping them and getting them the resources that they needed in order to be accomplished, instead you got rid of all the evidence. Like some people are more successful in the program than others, but I guess we don't have to deal with that as long as no one can see that. And the second problem is that the students in that program, their needs are not being met by faculty, but instead of recognizing that the department and the faculty are not supporting them, they are instead leveraging that grievance horizontally at other graduate students and making them miserable and not vertically at the faculty where that grievance actually belongs. The big problem with this to me is that it is a part of a culture that instead of celebrating each other's accomplishments and finding ways of making sure that everyone is being successful, instead has promoted tearing down your colleagues and tearing down other people and minimizing the things that they're doing to the point to where we're just going to get rid of all of the evidence. So that way we don't even have to address how toxic this culture has become. Look, I'm here to say none of these things serve us well in academia. If what we're trying to do is not just learn how to be more productive scholars, but to really think about our research as a way of connecting us to communities of scholars and building on conversations and moving forward in ways that are healthy and joyous, none of these things are going to help us address that problem. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how to handle the pressure when it seems like everyone else is getting published. So let's dive in. Are you interested in mastering scholarly writing, developing productivity, and increasing impact, all while staying healthy? Then welcome to the Publishing Academic Research Podcast. Hi, my name is Dr. Kyle Ruddick, and I'm a full professor at the University of Northern Iowa. I've written dozens of articles, books, chapters, and essays, as well as edited some of the top journals in my discipline. I meet so many scholars who have creative, innovative, and daring ideas, but can never seem to get those projects from proposals to print. I want you to get your work in the hands of people who will read it and appreciate it. So let's get into this week's big idea. So one thing I want to say before we really get into the reasons why I think that there's this problem with academic comparison that goes on. I think that much like the place that I toured whenever I was looking for doctoral programs, this is actually just a huge problem in academia in general. I can't tell you how many times I've talked with people from other departments, other disciplines, who have told me that they just don't talk about the cool stuff that they're doing, the awards, the publications, all those things that they're doing, because they know that someone in their department will try to minimize it. They'll undermine it. They'll make them feel like it's not a real accomplishment. There's so many people in academia who I don't know what happened in their life. Like, whether it's their parents, their upbringing, whatever it is, but it just kind of feels like they have this hole in their heart and nothing they can do can ever fill that void in them. And so whenever they see other people who get anything that they desire, their first reaction is always to try to tear that other person down because, how dare you get something I want? I need that. I need that to fill the hole in my heart. The problem with that, of course, is that there's no amount of anything that you could give this person. No awards, no publications, no anything that could fill this hole for them. They're just fundamentally unhappy people. And folks, I don't want this to be you. I don't want you to feel like publication is a hamster wheel or a point of comparison or a substitute for relationships with other people or anything else. Writing should be a place that's a refuge. It's a place that you can feel like you're pursuing your curiosity and that through that pursuit, you're generating or adding on to knowledge that has a practical benefit for our students, for our stakeholders, for people around the world. Also is a way for you to connect with other people who are also curious about those same things, and that through that, you find some joy and fulfillment in being a part of something that's larger than yourself. And so people who get to this place where publication is not about connecting to other people, it's about assuaging their own imposter syndrome, their own inferiority complex, whatever it might be, whatever that hole in their heart is, right? Those people are going to be bitter and miserable. And not only should we not let them take the joy from us, but we want to safeguard ourselves, safeguard our hearts to make sure that we're not being that person either. So let's talk about that. What are some reasons why we have academic comparison and why does it seem to be so toxic for us? Well, first, I think that now more than ever with social media, the ease by which we can look up how successful our peers are makes it really, really hard sometimes to feel like we're making strides and making gains in our own lives. Like, how many times on LinkedIn or Facebook have you seen, I'm excited to announce my new publication. I'm excited to announce I got this grant. I'm excited to announce, I'm excited, whatever it is, right? I mean, yeah, we're all excited, right? I do the same thing whenever I post to my social media. There's nothing wrong with being excited and being proud of the things that we do. We don't need to hide that light under a bush. But whenever you're in a place where you can always see other people's accomplishments, and you think of those accomplishments as a threat to your own, every one of those social media posts, every Google Scholar ping, every one of those things just kind of feels like a little dagger in your heart because you're just thinking to yourself, man, I'm smarter than that person. Why did they get that publication? Man, that person doesn't do their stats right. Why did they get that? Man, this person did this and this person did that. Why do they get to be happy and I don't get to be happy? That's really what's at the bottom line, right? That's what's going on here. The thing is, if you're pursuing those publications, award accolades, any of those things as a way of making yourself happy, I've got bad news for you. You're probably not going to be. Like, if you're hinging your self-worth on external things that are highly competitive, but also highly variable. Like, how many times have you had a good publication chance or a good grant or whatever sunk by a review or two for some stupid reason? Like, it's a highly competitive, but also highly variable game that we're all playing. So hinging your self-worth and self-concept on those things is you building your house on a foundation of sand, right? Like, the water's going to wash that away. So the first reason why I think a lot of this happens is just because of the seeming ease by which other people are outpacing us. With every award, every publication, every accolade they get, it just feels like you're getting left behind. And the second reason that we have this problem is because academia itself has a real problem with a culture of constant productivity. And oftentimes that productivity isn't even in things that really matter. In my current institution, I've been in so many meetings where we're all assigning each other some form of busy work. And oftentimes it's because one person has got it into their head that this is important and that we should all be doing this thing. And why aren't we doing this thing? And usually that's a provost or a dean, because whenever you get a new one of those, of course, here's all the things that we have to do for the new person. Better wait 5 to 7 years and see if we have a new set of things to do. But even whenever it's faculty member, department head, whatever, there's always someone who's willing to create more work for everyone else. And it does kind of seem like there's this sort of expectation that you should always be doing something. If you're not filling up all of your time being a professor, well, then you must just not really care. You must not care about your students. You must not care about your research. You must not care about anything, because there's always time for you to work just a little bit harder, to publish one more thing, to grade more papers, or answer phone calls or emails over weekends or whatever it might be. There's always more time that you could be filling. And I mean, yeah, are there people in your department or at your university who probably aren't working as hard as they could? Sure. Welcome to like every organization ever, right? I don't know why there's this idea that as faculty, we're expected to be 24/7 brilliant and productive, and anything less than that is some deep betrayal of all of this. I can only assume it's because as people find it more difficult to find employment, there's more of this push for people to have to defend every waking moment of their time being productive as a way of justifying why they have a job or they have this type of job or position or whatever it is. And on one hand, I want to acknowledge that as a full professor, it's very easy for me to wave my hands and say, oh, that's just all nonsense. A lot of people who are probably listening to this, you might be in a place of precarity and uncertainty, and those things certainly aren't nonsense to you. Those are very real problems that you're having to navigate. But at the same time, like, it is nonsense in the sense that our work is not going to be magically more valued by the public at large, by our colleagues, or even by our closest friends and relatives by just producing more of it. Like producing so much that you burn yourself out, producing so much that you're unhappy, producing so much that you don't have friends, you can't develop relationships, you get divorced, your kids don't like you. Like none of those things are worth any of this. There are very few sectors of the economy where I would say it was normal to make those types of sacrifices. And honestly, in places that they are making those sacrifices, they're probably going to be paid way more than you and I will ever make as professors. So what are we doing here, right? Like we're setting ourselves up to fail in a culture that pits us against each other and makes us all the poorer and the sicker and the unhealthier for it. So don't do that, right? This culture of constant productivity, that's a culture that's in distress. We should not feel like that. Good research comes from a time for us to be able to ruminate, to meditate, to take stock, to make good choices both for our research designs and for ourselves. And in a culture of constant productivity, you can't do that. And so we need to resist that. I think the third and final reason why academic comparison is such a problem is because in addition to academia of having a culture of constant productivity, we also have a culture of clear winners and losers. We don't really like to talk about that. Instead, we like to think that the ideas that gain currency are because they're the best ideas and that the people who got jobs is because it's a meritocracy and academia is a place where sound arguments and good reasoning prevail and win the day. You know, that's not true, right? I'm sorry. That's not academia because academia is like any other place. It's full of people. People are weird. People are wrong. People are smart. People are dumb. People are good. People are bad. There's a whole bunch of different people all trying to make their ways. And yes, we have doctorates. And yes, some people are very smart. But honestly, I've met a lot of people who don't have doctorates who seem pretty on the ball. And I've met some people who have doctorates and I go, oh my God, I don't know how you tie your shoelaces in the morning. Recognizing all the work and training it takes to be a good professor. At the same time, the culture we have is not one of some idealized meritocracy. Instead, we have a system of precarity and uncertainty that institutions take advantage of, so that way they can take advantage of us and our labor. Whether you're a master's student or a doctoral student who's teaching a bunch of different classes for barely enough pay to make rent, or adjuncts who are teaching at 3, 4, 5 different institutions and not making enough to pay their rent, or tenure track or tenure stream faculty members, many of whom are being asked to do more and more service and research and grant writing in order to make up for the fact that their department has far fewer faculty members in it than it did even 10 years ago. And oh, by the way, many of them are also not making enough to pay their rent in a lot of areas around the world. And so even at the earliest part of your programs, and whenever you become a master's student, and especially whenever you're a doctoral student, every class paper that you write, it has to be for publication. You need that for publication. You need to show it at conferences. You can't just work through ideas. No. It's got to be something, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to fill up that CV. And, you got to get all these grants because you got to bring all this money, because certainly no one else is giving any money to higher education. So who's going to finance all that fancy equipment that you've got there? So there's all this pressure to be productive. That's because we have this small and rapidly diminishing piece of the pie that's left. We're all scrambling for it. So every time that you see someone else get a publication, every time you see someone else get something that you know that you need in order to have a casino's chance at being able to teach a new generation of students, of being able to pursue your research, of being able to have these scholarly conversations, anything that we feel like other people are getting that we don't have is a threat to us and a threat to our ability to have that thing. So all these things together, the fact that social media makes it easy for us to have these markers of comparison, the fact that we are in this constant state of productivity, and the fact that at the end of the day, there are clear winners and losers, and that we are being forced to compete over this dwindling amount of opportunities for us to live the type of life that we want to live. All of these things put us in a place where our first step forward whenever we see other people's success is one of jealousy and of envy and of miserliness, where we don't even celebrate our colleagues And ultimately, this puts us in a place where we can't even be happy for ourselves, because if you can't be happy for other people, then you can't be happy for yourself. And this goes back to what I was saying before. In a place where you have this distressed culture, it creates or exacerbates this hole in your heart, and nothing fills it. We have to move past that place. We have to move past being envious and jealous and distrustful of other people and of their accomplishments, and recognize that all of us, we're all just trying to find our communities and people that will give us the respect and affirmation and joy that we want. And yes, there are very real material and economic pressures that face us, but those things are neither a justification nor an excuse for us to treat other people poorly, and also is neither a justification or an excuse for us to not be able to feel like we can live the type of life that we want to live. Okay, so at this point, we've talked about some of the reasons why we have this problem of academic comparison. So what are some ways that we can deal with this? Well, I think the first thing that we need to ask ourselves before we do anything else is just, are you doing enough? I mean, really, are you doing enough, right? Because there's this pressure for constant productivity, you really need to take a step back, take stock, and think, okay, do I feel like I'm not doing enough, or am I really not doing enough? I can't tell you how many times that I talk to people who are like, oh yeah, my department told me that I needed to have 3, 4, 5, 6 publications in order to get tenure. So I had 15. What are you doing? Right? That level of productivity, not only is that far in excess of what you were told that you needed to have, but also you've only really hurt yourself in so many ways. I recognize that there are some real objective criteria and sort of norms that guide how these things get dispensed. And it's important for us to know those things and to meet them. But it's also important for us to make sure that we are not doing so much that we are harming ourselves or our long-term trajectory. If you are in a doctoral program and you're wondering, have I published enough to get the type of job that I want to get post-graduation? And I frame the question like that because if you are looking to get into an R1 right out of your doc program, your publication record needs to look much different than if you wanted to work at a liberal arts college or a community college or a master's terminal college. There are different types of publication profiles that you should have depending on what kind of job and what kind of industry and discipline that you're in. So if you're wondering that, you need to go talk to your advisors and to the faculty of your department. Am I doing enough? If you already have a job, what is your tenure and promotion committee or your department head or any of those institutional bodies telling you? No, not Kevin or Karen down the hall who, they're always going to tell you, well, you can do more. And in my day, I did this. Who cares what they have to say? Because at the end of the day, what they say doesn't really matter. What matters is what your institution wants, and are you meeting those criteria? Are you? Yes? Great. Then who cares if you publish one more thing or a million things? If you're only asked to publish one thing a year, why are you publishing more than that? Is it because you're honestly interested in those questions? You love to publish this stuff and you love to do this type of work, and doing this actually is bringing you joy? Are you doing it because you feel this constant pressure to be productive? Are you doing it because you see other people publishing and you think, oh man, I need to be doing that or doing as much as that, or I can't be happy? Because if it's the latter, then that's not a good reason to be doing this type of work. You're not going to be happy because you're not going to be in a place where you can feel secure, where you can celebrate your accomplishments, where you can take stock of where you are in your life, because you're always measuring yourself based on what you perceive to be other people's productivity. So getting an objective idea of, are you doing enough? And yeah, maybe you have a year where you're kicking butt and you have more publications in that year than you needed to have. But that doesn't mean that you need to do that every year, because you need to recognize what your goals are and recognize what is consistent with your discipline and your department in terms of productivity. But recognizing what are your goals, what is consistent with your discipline and your department in terms of productivity, and then are you able to match those goals? That's the first fundamental question you should be asking yourself. I think that for some faculty, and I recognize the irony of this statement because I'm on a podcast about publishing, but I think that a lot of faculty put way too much emphasis on publication. I think they see it as a way of getting fame and stardom, and honestly, those should not be the criteria by which you evaluate whether you're successful or not. I think better metrics of success are you able to conduct research about the questions that interest you? Does it feel like you're in a place where you're pouring into a scholarly community and that community is in turn pouring back into you? Those are going to be the things that are way more beneficial for you and your long-term success and your mental health than anything else. Okay, so the second thing that I would say to do is I think it's important for us to reframe our envy into motivation. And what I mean by that is whenever you look at other people who are publishing things, who seem to be getting awards or accolades or any of those things, it's easy for us to come from a place of envy and say, I want the things that they have, and to get bitter whenever you don't have those things. And I think another way that you can look at that is, hey, that's the level of work I need to do in order to obtain the thing that they have. And am I willing to do that? And again, have a candid assessment about whether or not you want to do that. I find so many people in my field and in my discipline who are hugely successful. They write all the things, they guide all the dissertations, they work at the best institutions. And I find that they also have very few personal relationships. They usually don't have family obligations. They don't have children. They don't seem to have a very robust social life. And if you talk to them for any amount of time, they don't really have a lot of hobbies or interests beyond that. They don't really seem to have a lot going on for them outside of their research. And that's not to say that, their lives are somehow poor or the dimmer for it, but it is to say that they have made a choice in their life about the things that matter to them and how to obtain the goals that they want in their life. And I think that you can look at that and go, okay, if that's the game here, is the candle worth it? In order for me to be that successful, am I willing to give up the things that this other person has had to give up in order to have those things too? And if that's not you, then that's okay, right? If you have young children, I think it's probably a better use of your time making sure that your children are fed and clothed and loved than for you to publish another article. I don't think that should be a radical statement, but I think that for some people it is. I talk to my colleagues who are also parents and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry I wasn't able to get to this or that thing because my kid was sick. Why are you sorry? You can't control that. And kids are going to be kids. They get sick. That's what they do. Like, you made a choice to have that type of life, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, where it is wrong is if you make those choices and then you get angry or bitter or frustrated with other people who have things that you don't have. Okay, well, you made the choice to do something else. You should be happy with that thing. I know that there are people out there who they look at their colleagues, they have other obligations, whether it's health, children, family, whatever it might be, and they're like, oh, those are just excuses for you to not be a real academic. If you were truly committed to this work, if you would spend all your time being this. And that's just nonsense, man. Like, nothing that we are doing here. And I don't care if you're in social science research, humanities research, or if you're trying to figure out the grand unifying theory of physics. I don't care. Nothing that you're doing is more important than dealing with the people that you have in your life right in front of you. And I think that if we have a candid assessment of that, what has this person had to do in order for us to be successful? And am I willing to do that? That would bring a lot of things into focus. I like to play piano, right? I started kind of late in life. And so I'm not really good at it, right? Like, I can play some songs. People will recognize the song. We can all sing together. Like, we're going to have fun. But like, I'm never going to be a concerto pianist. I'm never going to do that. And why am I not going to do that? Because I'm not going to sacrifice the things in my life that I would need to sacrifice in order for me to be that good. I'm not going to spend the time. I'm not going to spend the mental energy. I'm not going to do those things to obtain that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with playing my piano to the level that we are able to drunkenly sing Piano Man with other folks. That's fun for me, but I'm not going to go beyond that. And so maybe that's you. Maybe you just look at this and you go, hey, I'm going to publish once a year or once every other year, or publish in a mid-tier journal rather than the best journal, whatever it might be. Because at the end of the day, if you were making that candid assessment because you were looking at the things that were going on in your life and you just thought, hey, this is the thing that I'm able to do. Could I do more than that? Yeah, maybe I could. But if I did that, I'd have to sacrifice these other things. And I'm not willing to sacrifice those things. Cool. Don't sacrifice those things in order to chase some elusive notion of fame in academia. Just work on the things that make you happy. That's what's important here. And I think that through that happiness, you're going to generate knowledge that is of practical significance and value to your students and to stakeholders and to other people who are going to read and cite your work. I think the final thing that we can do to deal with academic comparison is to start to redefine what we think of as success in academia. I think oftentimes we put a large amount of emphasis on the things that have tangible artifacts. So publications, grants, conference papers, things that we can look at and say, that had a competitive process. And we might have even developed some metrics, most of which are bunk and we shouldn't look at anyway. But we might even have some metrics that can say, oh, well, this publication is better than that publication. And while obviously, as a person who's doing this podcast and who's written as much as he has, I think that a publication is important as a way for us to connect with other people about our ideas and to learn and grow from each other. That's not the only way that we can be successful as faculty. It always amazes me the things that my more teaching-oriented colleagues come up with that engage students, and it seems to draw out some of the best work from them. I have colleagues who, they don't publish as much, but they've been absolutely fantastic in academic leadership positions across campus. People who are doing really great work, serving on committees, and are making sure that our university is not making stupid decisions that harm faculty. And that's because of their input that better decisions have been made. I have colleagues who are doing amazing community-oriented work. They're very outward-facing. They're practicing all sorts of stuff that they read and research about, but they're practicing that in communities and connecting the communities back to the university and to our mission. There's a lot of ways that we can be successful and be fulfilled. Academic publication is just one of those ways. And so if you're listening to this podcast, I suspect that you think publication is an important part of your scholarly trajectory, and that you want to be a part of this, but you should also remind yourself that might not be the best fit for you. And even if it is the best fit for you right now, maybe it's not the best fit for you in 15, 20, 25 years in the future. I never thought whenever I was first out of my doc program that I'd be doing a podcast, right? Well, A, because podcasts were really a thing back then, but also because this sort of like outward facing, talking with people and creating something that doesn't really have clear metrics of competition and success like traditional publication is. I didn't think I was going to do this. I thought I'm going to be a scholar, so I'm going to publish things. That's my job. So that's what I did. And I still do that, and I still find joy and fulfillment in that process, especially whenever I'm working with clients and students to help them get their ideas off the ground. But I never thought that I would have found so much meaning doing something like a podcast. So that's what I'm doing now. Am I going to do it in 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I don't know. Maybe not, right? As I've changed and the things that I value have changed, then I've had to change the things that I find as my metrics of success. And again, kind of thinking to yourself, what defines success for you in this job? What defines success for you now? What things do you need to accomplish in order for you to get whatever you're trying to get, whether that's your first job or your next appointment or promotion or tenure or whatever it might be? Or are there other ways that you can find success and how those align with what your department wants, what your university wants, and ultimately going to make you happy and fulfilled in the type of work that you're doing? Because, most of us, as soon as we get in these jobs, we've got 20, 25, 30 years in this job from the time that we start to the time that we retire, if that is any of us ever get to retire. But right, 20 to 30 years, like that's a long time, friends. That's a long time to be doing stuff that does not bring you joy, to be doing stuff that feels like it's always an upward slog, that feels like you're just always chewing on tinfoil. There are better uses of your time than doing things that don't make you happy and still be a competent, rigorous, joyous person in your department and in your life. Okay, so as we wrap up, I just want to reiterate how important it is that we reframe our academic comparisons from a place of being one of envy and jealousy to being a place of motivation and deep reconsideration of our goals. To really think about what it is that we want and to try to see others as good role models for us rather than as competitors. I want you to ask the question of yourself, what would it really look like to do an evaluation of what you want out of your private and personal life? And how are you going to work to be in a place where you can feel happy and fulfilled reaching your goals in all aspects of your life? Now, if you're interested in developing your writing in a way that you feel is sustainable and joyous, I encourage you, reach out to me. My contact information is in the description. I'm always happy to take on new clients. I'm always happy to work with people because I feel like there's a real need at all levels of academia for us to really start reframing our lives and our conversations away from this constant sense of pressure and comparison to being one of joy, rigor, and care. And at the end of the day, I want you to be happy and fulfilled, whether that's through publication or other routes within academia or even beyond it. So if you want to set up an appointment with me, I'm happy to talk about the things that are going on in your career and how we can get you to that next level. And if publication is the way that you want to do that, I hope you continue listening to this podcast and reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with you about the things that are exciting to you. I always want to make sure that you're publishing things that you're passionate about, so that way it gets into the hand of the people who are going to read it, share it, and cite it. Okay, so thank you so much, and I will see you in next week's episode. Hey writers, what's stopping your best ideas from becoming your next big publication? Brilliant ideas shouldn't die in your drafts folder. Now's the time to bridge the gap between the possible and the published. If you have the time, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast, leave a positive review, assign this to your classes, or share it with a colleague. All those things help get the word out and let me know what I can do to make this podcast the best resource for you. Also, if you'd like to set up a time to chat with me about your next big idea, then you can find my information in the podcast description where you can schedule a time. So until then, keep healthy, keep writing, and don't let reviewer 2 get you down.